All right, so today we're going to look at something a little different, something kind of cool, I think.
Okay.
This piece from the New Indian Express, it's called Retiring as a Cricket Viewer.
Interesting.
And just that title. I mean, someone's like done with cricket after the 2019 World Cup final.
Wow.
Was it that good, or is this like something deeper, you know, about passions and how they change over time?
I think it might be a bit of both.
Yeah.
You know what's really fascinating to me is how the author uses that 2019 World Cup as this kind of like launching pad to
Uh-huh.
explore how fandom can change over time. It's
Yeah.
almost like he's using it as a way to measure his own personal growth.
Right. He kind of takes us along on this personal journey.
Mm-hmm.
He links his cricket viewing to different points in his life.
Right.
So he starts way back in 96, like just a kid trying to figure out the game.
Yeah.
Then you go to 99, he's dealing with all those, teenage things,
Oh,
while
yeah.
still trying to catch the matches.
That's so relatable.
Yeah.
I mean, think about it, right? These huge sporting events, they become woven into our memories.
Totally.
They almost mark different chapters in our lives.
Absolutely. For me, it was the Olympics,
Okay.
especially the summer games. Like, I can practically map my childhood
Uh-huh.
by which athlete was like the big deal at the time.
Makes sense.
But back to our cricket fan, right?
Yeah.
So 2003, he's this angsty teenager who's left home.
Right.
Then college rolls around 2007. I'm kind of thinking those World Cup watch parties got a little wild.
Oh, probably. Maybe we'll let him keep those college memories to himself.
Haha, fair enough. But it's that connection, between life and the sport that
Yeah,
really stands out.
totally.
He even talks about being this struggling journalist in 2011.
Wow.
And then by 2015, finding his groove as a writer and a comedian.
Hmm.
It's like the World Cup is this steady beat in the background of his life.
I like that analogy, the steady beat. Yeah.
And then comes 2019, which he calls like a turning point.
Okay.
He describes the World Cup final as this total thriller. But there's a catch, right?
Yeah, wasn't there that rule?
Yes. That rule.
It caused a lot of debate, even among serious cricket fans.
Huge debates, for anyone who might not remember it, basically involved a batsman getting run out.
Right after he deflected the ball?
Exactly. And the whole controversy was whether the batsman meant to block the field or if it was just like an accident.
Yeah, that ambiguity is what kept everyone talking.
For sure. Did it add to the drama or did it kind of ruin the win? I don't know.
Right, it's hard to say.
And it feels like that ending might have been part of why this guy decides to step back from cricket.
It's possible, but then he throws in this whole other thing.
What's that?
He talks to a teenager who only watches the IPL,
Yeah, the IPO.
the Indian Premier League, for those who aren't familiar.
Right. It's like a faster, shorter version of cricket.
Lots of big hits, quick runs, very exciting to watch.
Total spectacle.
Wow.
But it's interesting that this kid only follows the IPL, not the World Cup.
Yeah, almost like a generation gap, right?
Feels like a...
There's definitely a shift happening in how people connect with cricket.
Yeah.
I mean, the IPL is super popular, especially with younger fans.
Mm-hmm.
You could even argue it's changing the sport.
So that begs the question, are you a purist? Someone who loves the classic format? Or
Right. Are you open to these new, faster versions?
yeah, can both exist together, or will one eventually just take over completely?
Okay, question.
Tough ones.
Yeah.
It's like with music, some people are all about vinyl and that classic sound.
Yeah, while others are totally into streaming and all the new genres.
Exactly. I guess there's room for everyone, right?
I think so, but I'm curious, what do you think is driving this change towards formats like the IPL?
Hmm.
Is it just shorter attention spans, or is there something more to it?
Good question. I don't know if it's just attention spans.
Yeah.
I think the IPL is designed to be exciting, action-packed.
That's true. It's a different kind of experience.
Right, like the difference between a 5-course meal and a gourmet burger.
I like that.
Both can be satisfying, but they appeal to different tastes, different moods.
Totally.
So it's not about replacing the traditional game.
Yeah.
It's more like offering a different way to experience it.
Exactly. It's adding a whole new dimension to being a cricket fan.
Yeah, and maybe that's part of what our author is struggling with.
What do you mean?
This feeling that the cricket he grew up with is changing into something new.
Mm-hmm.
And he's not sure where he fits in anymore.
That makes sense. I can see that.
It's like that whole peak experiences thing.
Okay.
He talks about retiring as a viewer, like a cricketer retiring after a big win.
Right.
He had his ultimate cricket viewing experience,
Uh-huh.
and now he wonders if anything can ever top that.
It's an interesting way to think about it.
It really is. It makes you wonder about fulfillment and how we deal with those moments that define our passions.
Right. Like, is it even possible to truly retire from something you love?
Or does it just change shape?
That's something to think about.
We'll come back to that. But for now, let's get back to our author's story.
Okay.
He talks about this golden age of cricket, the time he grew up
She gets
with.
drenched in nostalgia.
Totally. He talks about Donny Coley Williamson, like legends in the cricket world.
Huge names.
And it's not just the players. He also describes this shift from newspapers to mobile phones.
Wow.
It's like he's witnessed this tech revolution alongside his love of cricket.
That's amazing. And it connects back to what we were talking about earlier, right?
Yeah.
How our passions are intertwined with these big cultural changes.
Exactly. It's not just about the game itself, it's the whole world around it.
A whole context.
But this idea of a golden age, it's interesting.
It is.
Is there really such a thing as an objective golden age?
Good question.
Or is it always subjective, tied to our own experiences and memories?
That's what we'll explore next.
Okay.
He doesn't just romanticize his golden age. He actually gives specific reasons why it's so important to him.
All right, I'm hooked.
Yeah.
Let's dig into this golden age and unpack what makes these memories so powerful.
Let's do it.
We'll be right back.
Sounds good. So, it's interesting how the author, when he talks about this golden age,
Yeah.
he doesn't just throw that term around.
Yeah.
He really digs into why this specific period of cricket is so important to him.
Okay, so what makes his golden age so special?
Hmm.
Is it just about the big names and the changing media, or is there something more?
He definitely talks about those things,
Yeah.
like the star power of Donny Coley Williamson.
Yeah.
These guys aren't just athletes, they're icons.
Right.
And he mentions that shift from newspapers and radio to TV and then mobile phones.
But I feel like there's something deeper going on.
Yeah.
Like, it's not just what he watched, but how he experienced it.
I think you're right.
Almost like the whole cultural context adds another layer to his memories.
He even talks about watching matches with friends.
Ah.
That shared excitement, the collective groans when something goes wrong.
Totally.
Those social connections seem to be a big part of his golden age.
Makes sense when I think about my golden age of video games.
Oh.
It wasn't just the graphics or the gameplay.
Right.
It was those late night sessions with my buddies,
Uh-huh.
arguing about strategies, celebrating wins, maybe even getting a little too competitive sometimes.
Uh-huh. Huh? I feel that it's those shared experiences that make a moment truly special.
Absolutely. And it sounds like our author is kind of missing that feeling.
Yeah, even as he knows that cricket, like everything else, is always changing.
So is he really retiring from cricket?
Hmm.
Or is he more saying goodbye to his specific chapter of his fandom?
I think it's probably more the latter.
Like the chapter that lines up with his own golden age.
Exactly. That's the interesting part. He's wrestling with that very question.
Mm-hmm.
He even admits that there might be even more amazing matches in the future.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll even be watching cricket telepathically one day.
Yeah, who knows? But there's this hint of sadness there.
What do you mean?
Like a feeling that nothing will ever be quite as magical as what he's already experienced.
It's like he's reached the summit of his cricket fandom, and he's looking back, appreciating the journey, but knowing he can't stay there forever.
Right, and it makes you think about those peak experiences.
Mm-hmm.
Is there an element of fear there? Like, if you've already had the ultimate experience,
Yeah.
is it almost a letdown to keep chasing that same high?
That's a really good point. Maybe there's a subconscious fear that nothing will ever compare.
Right, but maybe it's not about trying to recreate those past experiences.
Yeah.
Maybe it's about being open to new forms of joy and excitement.
Exactly. Instead of trying to relive the past, we can allow our passions to guide us in new and unexpected directions.
So instead of recreating the past,
Right.
it's more about letting those passions lead us somewhere new.
Exactly. And I think that's where the author's decision to retire could be seen as a kind of reset.
Okay.
He's not giving up on cricket altogether.
Right.
He's just shifting his focus. Maybe finding new ways to connect with the sport that feel right to him now.
It's like he's realizing that passions aren't fixed. They change, they evolve. But that core feeling, the love for the game,
Yeah.
it doesn't just vanish. It just takes on a different shape.
And maybe that's a healthier, more realistic way to think about our passions.
I think so.
Instead of holding on to an idealized past,
Right.
we can embrace the changes, the new experiences waiting for us.
I like that. So instead of retiring from our passions,
Yeah,
it's more about letting them grow and mature along with us.
absolutely. And it makes me wonder about the author himself.
What do you mean?
Do you think he'll really stay away from cricket?
Hmm.
Or will he find himself drawn back in somehow?
It's a good question, and one we can all think about.
Yeah.
But before we wrap things up, there's one more thing I want to touch on from the article.
Okay, what's that?
Remember how we were talking about each generation having its own golden age?
Yes, this idea that things were somehow better back then.
Such a common thing.
It is, and the author definitely does that a bit.
Yeah, he romanticizes his era of cricket.
Yeah.
But I'm curious, from a psychoma standpoint,
Mm-hmm.
why do we do that?
Mm-hmm.
Why do some memories have such a strong hold on us, even when we know things weren't always perfect?
Well, that's where things get really interesting. There's a
Yeah.
lot of research into the science of nostalgia
Ah,
and how it shapes our view of the past.
so let's dive into that.
Let's do it.
Let's unpack the psychology of these golden age memories
Okay.
and see what makes them so powerful.
Right.
Okay, so we were talking about, golden ages
Yeah.
and why some memories just stick with us so strongly.
Right.
I'm really curious to hear more about the psychology of nostalgia.
Yeah.
What makes those moments from our past feel so special, even if they weren't always perfect?
Well, nostalgia is a powerful emotion.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just remembering, it's more like re-experiencing.
Hmm.
When we tap into those nostalgic memories,
Yeah.
our brains actually release dopamine,
Oh, yeah.
that feel-good chemical,
The one linked to rewards and pleasure.
Exactly.
So our brain is giving us a reward for remembering the good old days.
In a way, yes, and there's even more to it. Okay.
Nostalgia isn't just about individual pleasure.
What do you mean?
It has a social function too.
Yeah.
When we share nostalgic memories with other people,
Uh-huh.
it creates this feeling of connection and belonging.
Right. Like when people reminisce together.
Exactly. Remember when we used to? Or back in my day?
Oh, totally. My family reunions are basically just nonstop nostalgia.
Ah,
Everyone's telling stories about childhood shenanigans,
yeah.
old family trips. That one time my Aunt Carol accidentally set the Christmas tree on fire.
And those shared stories, even if they're a little exaggerated,
Right.
they help strengthen family bonds and create a shared history.
So it's not just about remembering, it's about reinforcing those connections.
Exactly. And that brings us back to our cricket fan.
Okay.
When he talks about his golden age,
Yeah.
it's obvious those memories are tied to his relationships and his sense of self.
Hmm.
It's not just about the sport itself.
Right. It's about who he was back then,
Uh-huh.
the people he shared those experiences with.
And how those memories shape how he sees himself. It's like nostalgia becomes part of our own personal story.
Exactly the story we tell ourselves about who we are and where we come from.
And that's probably why it's so hard to let go of those golden ages.
Yeah, even when we know we're looking at the past with rose-colored glasses.
It makes you wonder, is there a downside to nostalgia?
Mm,
Can it ever be unhealthy or hold us back?
that's a great question, and one that researchers are still studying.
Yeah.
There's some evidence that if we dwell on the past too much,
Yeah.
it can make us sad or longing or even regretful.
Makes sense.
It can also stop us from fully living in the present
Okay.
and looking forward to the future.
So it's all about balance.
I think so.
Enjoying those nostalgic memories,
Right.
but not letting them become our only source of happiness or meaning.
Exactly. It's about appreciating the power of nostalgia
Yeah.
while also realizing that the present moment has its own beauty and potential.
I like that. So it's not about trying to recreate the past.
Right.
It's more about finding new things to be passionate about.
Exactly. And that brings us back to our author's decision to retire as a cricket viewer.
Yeah.
It's like he's choosing to preserve those perfect golden age memories,
Mm-hmm.
knowing that trying to relive them might just lead to disappointment.
It's an interesting perspective, and it makes
Yeah.
me think,
About what?
how do we honor those past passions
Yeah.
without letting them control our present or limit our future?
It's a really important question for all of us.
It is. It makes me think about all the things I used to love.
Mm.
Hobbies. I've dropped interests that have faded.
Right.
And I wonder, is it possible to rekindle those old flames?
Yeah.
Or is it better to just appreciate the memories and be open to new passions?
Yeah, it's a tough one.
I guess there's no right or wrong answer.
No, I think it's a personal journey,
Uh-huh.
and there's no one-size-fits-all solution.
The key is to be mindful of how those past passions shape us.
Yeah,
Appreciate the role they've played
right.
and be open to new adventures and discoveries.
Exactly. I think that's a great way to sum it up.
So to everyone listening out there,
Yeah.
we encourage you to think about your own golden ages,
Mm-hmm.
those memories that make you smile and feel warm inside.
Right.
Cherish them, share
Oh,
them,
totally.
but also be open to the idea that your greatest passions might still be out there waiting.
I love that idea.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
It's been fun.
We'll catch you next time for another exploration of the cool ideas that shape our world.